Okay, we ready?
Progress.
Okay, here we go. Turn to page Parshas Vayetze and turn to page 112. So in today's class, we're going to examine Yaakov's journey from Israel to Mesopotamia and then back to the land of Israel. And we're going to be talking about the angels that accompanied him. And that's going to teach us much about what to think about and what perspective to put life's hurdles, challenges, and even crises. Okay? So when Yaakov was leaving home, he was traveling to a place called Haran. And why did he go to Haran? Because his mother and thus his father said that your life is in danger. Your brother Esau is enraged with you. You did two things. You tricked him into purchasing the birthright, and you tricked him into taking the blessings from Isaac away from him and taking it for yourself. So Esau wanted to kill him. So his mother is worried for his safety. And she says, I have an uncle. He lives in Mesopotamia. He still was considered Israel proper in some way. And the Torah tells us something very interesting. It actually tells it to us on his return. But from that, we learn a lot about how he was accompanied when he left Israel from the get-go. So take a look at text 1. It says, and Yaakov went on his way, and godly angels met him. And when Jacob saw them, these angels, he said, this is God's camp. And he named the place Machanayim. Now, Machanayim, by the way, it's a game. You know what Machanayim is? Dodgeball. Because you have two camps. So Machanayim is actually plural. And so it means two camps. Now, why were there two camps? So the Medrash tells us on this, usually there's just one group of angels, and that's a camp. Why two camps? So the Medrash, Tanchuma, on page 113, says, what is the meaning of Machanayim? What's the meaning of two camps? So he says clearly there were two camps of angels. Why? When Jacob traveled to Mesopotamia, angels from Israel protected and accompanied him. When they arrived at the border of the Holy Land, the angels from Israel departed, and other angels from the diaspora descended to escort him. So you have the angels accompanying him to the land of Israel. When they come to the border, it's almost like they didn't have passports. Then other angels from the diaspora come, pick him up, and take him all the way to Laban's house. Now, on the return journey, upon his return from Laban's home, the angels in whose care he had been entrusted accompanied him until he arrived at Israel's border. When the angels from Israel sensed Jacob's impending arrival, they left Israel, but listen to those words. They left Israel, Yotzu likrase, they left Israel to greet him and escort him back. So those are the two camps of the angels. So we have angels were there to escort him and protect him. One served in the Holy Land. One served outside the Holy Land. And when Yaakov neared the border on his return to Israel, the angels that escorted him from Mesopotamia up to that point, but yet the angels from Israel came out to greet him. So we find something very strange here. I don't know if you're picking up on this yet or not. So first of all, we can start off by asking the simple question. Why do you need two sets of angels? Whether they got tired? And the little joke about passports, I don't think is true. So why couldn't they cross the borders? Now, you might say that, hey, we know there are levels of angels. We have it in our davening. There are angels that are called srafim. There are angels that are called ofanim. There are angels that are called chayot. The Rambam Maimonides discusses actually, which angels are greater in stature than other angels. So we can simply say that the angels of Eretz Israel, why were they the angels of Israel? Because they were holier. Why were angels of Chutz La'aretz, of the diaspora? Because they were less holy. So, in a sense, the ones that were from Israel, I guess, not they couldn't, they wouldn't give them permission. Yeah, they're not meant to. They're not meant to go and be in a place that is of lesser kedusha, lesser holiness than the holiness of Eretz Yisrael of Israel. Now, the Medrash says that clearly in text 3a. He says angels that serve in the land of Israel are not permitted to serve outside of Israel, and vice versa. Now, if that's true, and we've already established why you needed two different camps, the big question is, if that's the case, that was true when Yaakov left Israel to go to Mesopotamia. The angels came to the border, the other ones came to the border, they took over. But clearly when he came back, we just read that Yatsu, they left Israel to greet him. They did leave Israel for a small amount of time. What? What do you mean they had to go back? They did go back to Israel, but why all of a sudden were they allowed to leave? The Medrash actually addresses this question somewhat. In text number 3b, when Jacob arrived at the border and was about to enter, God summoned his angels that served in the Holy Land, and he said, Jacob was about to return, let us go out to him. Let us go out to him. So the Medrash says, what can this be compared to? He says, a king, his son traveled abroad to marry. Many days later, when he returned to his father's place, his father told his guard, come, let us go and greet him. So when Yaakov was about to come back to his father's home, God summoned the ministering angels and said, let's go out. So that's why the Medrash originally says that Yatsu likrasi lislavis loy. So what do we see? That leaving Israel, the Medrash just tells us that the angels from Israel are not allowed to go to the diaspora. The diaspora are not allowed to go to Israel. And yet here, God himself is telling the angels, you know what? It's a lot nicer when you go out a little bit more and you come greet him. You know what? In this case, you can step out a bit. Why? Why don't you just work it the way you worked it when he left? You guys go to the border. The other ones will come to the border. It'll be like the east-west, the wall of Berlin. When they hand people over. You'll come to that little neutral area, no man's land, and Yaakov will be handed over. Why all of a sudden did God go against his own rules? Fair? Okay. So we're going to go to understand this better. We're going to delve into Jewish law, into a halacha that dictates the conditions of when you're allowed to leave Israel at all. So from the beginning of time, when Jews were already residing in Eretz Yisrael, Jewish law said there's a holiness to the land. You live there, you can't just pick yourself up and leave. So under what conditions can you, Maimonides, the Rambam, offers certain conditions that one can leave Israel? By the way, with the intention to return, by the way. Was never meant to be permanent. But take a look at 4a. It is forbidden to travel from Israel to the diaspora. The only exceptions are to study Torah, to marry, to save one's property from Gentiles. So we have study Torah, marry, save property. And then, like I just told you, then you have to return to Israel, get the job done, and then come back. And then the Rambam writes you can also leave for business purposes. However, it is forbidden to leave Israel with the intention of settling permanently in the diaspora, unless the famine of Israel is so severe that a dinner's worth of wheat is sold at 2 dinners. Maimonides continues and says, when do these conditions apply? When one possesses financial resources, but food is expensive. However, if food is inexpensive, but a person cannot find financial resources or employment and has no money available, then you could go to any place to find relief. So, study Torah from a teacher who is so amazing. Not in Israel, unfortunately. You leave Israel. You go to Babylon. They had amazing you can leave. You need to get married because, I don't know, the Sabras don't want you. Whatever. You're not finding your shidduch. You can leave. You want to save an at-risk property from a Gentile? You can leave. You need business. Your Pasha can't find parnasa. You cannot find livelihood. You can leave. And under conditions of famine. Okay. But still, Maimonides says that one can do all of that, but eventually has to return. So if you achieve your objectives, you have to come back to the land of Israel. Now, and this is what Rabbi Yosef Cairo, author of the Shulchan Aruch, wrote that and confirmed that what Maimonides meant to return, that you cannot settle permanently in the diaspora. You know, when Israelis used to come to live here, the famous question was, when are you going back? He says, when the kids graduate high school. So he says, when is that? He says, I don't have the kids yet. So, you know. There is, interestingly, another law that is derived from a story in the Talmud. The Talmud tells us in text 5a that Rav Asi had an elderly mother whom he had left behind when he moved to the land of Israel. After settling in the land of Israel, he heard that she wants to come join him. He came to Rabbi Yochanan. He said, may I leave? He says, it's forbidden. What happens, he says, if I'm going to greet my mother? So he said, Asi, you want to go? May God bring you back in peace. So Rabbi Yochanan permitted Rabbi Asi, adding another case, that if you want to go and care for an elderly parent, it sounds like you can go. Rabbi Menachem Meiri wrote that you can, for honoring your parents, also leave. Now, it's interesting, Maimonides, who got all his laws from the Talmud, he didn't have a Google search or a Rabbi Yosef Cairo. He extracted everything from the Talmud. So it's interesting. Maimonides certainly knew the story of Rav Asi, but it's not one of the 5 conditions that the Rambam Maimonides lists. So the question is, why do we think that that particular mitzvah wasn't something that Maimonides included in his list? Something to think about. Now, a possible answer is that Maimonides is writing only the exceptions to the rule if you're leaving Israel for a substantial amount of time, because you don't know how long it's going to take for you to get married. You don't know how long it's going to take for you to be financially stable. You don't know how long it's going to take you to take care of your piece of property, and so on and so forth. But in this case, maybe when Rabbi Yochanan agreed to Rav Asi is because he didn't believe that this actually is, or in the case of the Rambam, that Maimonides actually didn't believe that this is to be considered leaving Eretz Yisrael. Why not? My mother doesn't live here. I'm leaving the borders. I'm going to greet my mother. In this case, the Talmud said that he thought that she was going to come back with him. So in this case, it's possible to suggest that Maimonides doesn't think that this is a valid case of leaving Israel. Because you're going with a specific purpose to bring somebody else back to Israel. In this case, it was his mother. But maybe it would apply to everyone. In other words, if I'm going with an agenda to quickly bring somebody back with me to Eretz Yisrael, I've never left. I have no diaspora issue. It's not like I have to find a woman from the diaspora. No, I'm just going for a quick trip to bring somebody back with me. In other words, can we say that the purpose of the journey will determine the nature? Again, if I don't have financial stability, who knows how long it will take me to create financial stability. I'm going here for a specific purpose. I cannot find livelihood in Israel. The diaspora is going to provide for me livelihood. I cannot find a wife in Israel. Diaspora is going to provide for me, hopefully, a wife. But here, the diaspora is not providing anything for me. I'm completely absorbed with Israel. In fact, I'm bringing somebody back with me to live in Eretz Yisrael. I'll give you an example. There were many, many cases of great rabbis who spent years out of Eretz Yisrael. For instance, the Chida, Rabbi David Azulai. He traveled the whole world to collect money for Israel. Throughout the ages of Israel, Israel was always, you think it started now with bonds now. They were always in need of money. The financial situation of the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael were always dire. And they would send great rabbis. Sometimes many of them would write potential divorces because they were lost at sea. You know, there were always dangers on the road. But they went, and you didn't go for 2 weeks. You went to other communities. You went to Spain, and you went to literally collect money for the welfare of the Jewish communities in Eretz Yisrael. Many of them, by the way, served a double purpose. And some of them, actually, we have tremendous accomplishments. The Chida was able to visit libraries that he did not have access in Eretz Yisrael, like in England and so on and so forth, that had so much Jewish Jewish archives. But it also served a purpose because when he traveled, many of these communities that he traveled to didn't have access to the caliber of rabbi that the Chida was. So he was able to sit there for weeks on end and answer questions and help solve issues that they were having and so on and so forth.
Take his family with him?
Yeah, sure, because there was a family trip. No, it was dangerous to travel in those days. He traveled alone. That's why I said many of them would write a bill of divorce that would serve retroactively. Anyways, so if somebody in those days would travel to the diaspora to raise money for the Jewish community in Israel, he didn't want to be there. The nature of the journey was that really he never left Israel. I'm in Israel. I have this unfortunate thing that I got to do. So if we can say that maybe the Maimonides believed that there are certain conditions that don't qualify you as leaving Israel, and that's why he didn't include it. Is this okay with you guys? Take a look at text number 6. Maybe we can apply the same thing to the angels who left Israel to escort Yaakov back at home. Why did they make an exception for the angels who came to escort Yaakov back to Israel. And maybe the Rebbe says the angels from Israel left Israel to escort Jacob back to Israel. And thus there was no prohibition against leaving. What does that mean? Yaakov was allowed to leave Israel. Why? Because his life was in danger. When your life is in danger, of course, you can do anything. You can desecrate Shabbos. You can certainly desecrate the mitzvah not to leave Israel. But since he had the right to leave Israel, he certainly didn't know how long he was going to be. The angels didn't escort him outside of Israel. But when he came back, all those years later, 20 years later, 22 years later, for some reason, they were able to leave Israel. So let's maybe take this from more than one perspective. Think about it. Rabbi Yochanan allowed Rav Asi to leave Israel to bring back somebody to Israel. In this case, God said, this guy's been away too long. You can cross the border to bring him back even quicker. They're leaving Israel to bring back somebody into Israel didn't constitute a leaving of Israel at all. In the same way that the Talmud says that Rav Asi was able to leave to bring his mother back, and that's why Maimonides doesn't include it as one of the reasons to leave Israel, because that's not called leaving Israel. Now, is that all okay with you? I keep asking you. Now I want to veer off just a little bit and talk about Yaakov's journey. There's a story that I've said many, many times over my years. Maybe if you've heard it, okay. But it says a Russian was walking in the morning with his talus bag, and a policeman stopped him and said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I don't know." And the policeman said, "Listen, you're a Jew. You're not meant to lie. You have a talus bag. It is clear that you're going to shul." Anyway, he schlepped him to the judge, and the judge said, "Listen, why would you say this to the soldier? You clearly have." He says, "Listen, I didn't lie. It's not like your soldier said. He asked me, where am I going? I said, I don't know. Why? Because a Jew actually doesn't know where he's going. And I'll prove it to you. I left this morning my house with this talus bag thinking I'm going to shul. And guess, look where I am." So a person never knows where he's going, right? What does that mean? Yaakov didn't know exactly when he left Israel what God's intentions are. He knew that he was in danger. His mother said, the Torah tells us, you're going to go for a yamim achadim. You'll go for a short time, Just be till your brother's anger has a chance to calm itself. You'll go for a little bit, you come home. But what does Judaism tell us? That Yaakov and Esav's anger to Yaakov was just a trigger. What was the real purpose? Hashem later made it known to him. What happened in those years? He married, he had a family, and he established the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah, outside of Israel. So something could seem like a terrible distraction, but with time, the purpose of the journey becomes apparent. Now, this important note is true for all of the Jewish people as a whole. It's the reason for our diaspora. So somebody will say, Rabbi, Don't you rabbis say in the Talmud, don't you say it's because of our sins that we've been exiled to outside of our land, that we're not self-governing? And the answer is, yeah, how could I disagree with that? But just like Esav's anger and Esav's threat of killing Yaakov, I just said was a trigger. Guess what? Our sins are the trigger that lead us into the diaspora. But don't remain there. That would be pretty bad. We really need to find the real reason, the real purpose of this long journey. And there is a famous piece of Talmud, which many of you may know. It's text number 7, that Rabbi Elazar said the only reason God exiled the Jewish people among the nations was for them to be joined by converts. The Torah states, I will plant the Jews in the earth of my sake, for my sake. And the only reason why one plants a small measure of seeds is to harvest many bushels of grain. What does that do? That shifts the whole purpose of exile from only being one of punishment, of being one of purpose. First of all, there are souls that need to be redeemed in the sense of the converts that come and join the Jewish people. But I imagine over the years, there aren't enough converts to justify all the stuff that we've been through, you know? But we do believe that a true convert is someone who has sparks of a Jewish soul. The famous statement when it says a convert who wishes to convert, it doesn't say a non-Jew who wishes to convert. It doesn't use the word guy, non-Jew. Why? Because a true convert is a Jewish soul that has been so lost that they find themselves in a non-Jewish body. And so we're meant to find them. And the only opportunity to find them is if we're spread out all over the world. Now, this mission is so important to God that he allows us and forces us out of the Holy Land to find them. And in a sense, we can say that Yaakov did that too. Yaakov left Israel, and what did he find? He found a Leah and a Rachel. And they together gave birth to the 12 tribes. So, and in Chabad Hasidic literature, we find that we could apply the same thing like the converts to souls that are really Jewish, that also find themselves in a deep diaspora and have no connection to Judaism. And the only way to find these souls is also to be in every corner of the world. Maybe that's what the Rebbe wanted, you know? The famous statement that Hitler went all over the world to find a Jew, and the Rebbe decided it's time for us to find our own Jews, you know? So, take a look at the last paragraph on text number 8. This is the deeper meaning of our sage's statement. The Jews were dispersed among the nations to be joined by converts, literally converts, people who were born to a non-Jewish mother. The statement refers more broadly, we can say, to all souls and sparks that are born to us while dispersed among the nations. They are called converts because they come from a distant foreign space and are drawn back to holiness. When a Jewish child is born in exile, a spark formerly embedded in our host nation enters the Jewish body to serve God through Torah study and prayer for 70 years. It is similar to someone who converts and takes refuge under the wings of God's sheltering presence. In some way, we can compare a lost Jew to a convert. Same thing is happening. So we're dispersed in the diaspora to bring all these sparks back into realm of holiness. So, I'll end off with this maybe. When a country has an embassy, it becomes a place of refuge. You literally take Argentina and you put it in Manhattan. A guy can find refuge from the authorities by going into his embassy. When Yaakov came back with all these family members and had brought from diaspora these sparks and saved these roses from amongst the thorns, as Rachel has described, amongst the loved ones of the world, he already had started his own personal Israeli embassy. So if we want to add, maybe, besides the fact that the angels were able to leave Israel because they weren't really leaving Israel because they were getting their mother to come back, just like the Talmud says. But we can add maybe one more nuance, that when they went to greet him, they went to a mini Israel already. It brought such holiness. He had created this pocket of holiness from Mesopotamia and was bringing it back to Israel. Take a look at text number 9. This is the words of the Rebbe. There are two types of angels. When Jacob traveled to Mesopotamia, angels from Israel accompanied him in Israel to empower him for the task that lay ahead of him in the diaspora. The angels who came to greet him upon his return, guess what? What are our angels? They're angels that we create through our deeds. We're created by Jacob's success in transforming the diaspora into a pocket of Israel. These were permitted to enter the diaspora because Jacob transformed it into a mini Israel by drawing Israel's sanctity into the diaspora. The first set of angels were created by Yaakov to protect him, by Yaakov's deeds, but they were created by Yaakov in Israel. They were angels made in Israel, and they had to stay in Israel. They could escort him and empower him, but only up to his departure. The second set of angels were created by Yaakov's work in creating a mini Israel in the diaspora. And therefore, when he returned, they were able to greet him. They were crossing the border, was not a problem. Why? Because they went from a geographic Israel to a mini Israel in the diaspora, like an embassy. And so when he came close, they were actually able to leave. And this is what we have to know. Every deed of ours, every prayer, every Torah study, what we're doing now creates our angels. So life is always going to give us challenges. But there's a difference. If you think you're going somewhere on your own, then you hope that you have enough strength and enough fortitude and the wits to be able to overcome them. But if you feel that you're traveling because this is a journey that God has laid out for you, then don't worry about it. If God mapped out your journey, He has empowered you to be able to overcome any of the challenges that present themselves. And remember that those challenges aren't meant to hold you back, but they're actually meant to expand your sphere of influence in creating a circle of holiness in places that you never even imagined you would end up. I want to share with you that, one of the hostages that I've always spoken a lot about was Sapir Cohen. famous chapter 27, with David Hashem Ori. And she always thought that because of her sins, of her wrongdoings, that's why what happened to her on October 7th happened. And then at some point she said, I got to stop this. And I have to believe there's a reason. She actually spoke here not too long ago that she felt that she had never done anything with her life that was meaningful and purposeful. So she decided then that if I believe in God and God brought me here, then there has to be meaning to being here. And that's what she decided. She realized that there were many, that the people that she was in close proximity to were basically buckling under the pressure, and that her job was to be able to rally their spirits and give them hope for life. And that helped her change the darkness and the dread of those tunnels to being there for a purpose, for a reason, and that it wasn't just a haphazard journey. It was God who unfortunately brought her there, and that she would be able to create light even in those dark holes of hell. And with that, I wish you well.
Oh, is she?
Sapir-
What is she?